in our community have been at this for a while, and it can get discouraging when you feel like it's a dream that might not ever happen. And it's really been picking up nice momentum and getting good, concrete, tangible gains. So I'm excited about what we're going to talk about. Sandra, are you in a place you can introduce yourself?
Yes, if my dog will allow me. My name is Sandra Rue. I'm living in Charlotte, North Carolina, and my brother actually lives in Evergreen, Colorado, and I've visited there several times, and love it out there. And then I have looked at your website. Um, and got some information there, and it just sounded really interesting. But I'm looking for more information, so I'm just in the early stages.
Well, great. Sounds good. Eva, if you help me watch the chat, that would be great. Thanks for putting the link in there. If any of you are not already on our mailing list and you want to drop an email in there, or if you have any questions and you'd like a follow-up from either Eva or myself, just let us know in that chat. I am going to start sharing the screen in a moment and go over the website. It sounds like everybody's at least visited that, but I want to point out a few things and show you where you can what are the highlights really? It's a nice way to kind of drive the conversation and talk about where this community came from and what we're looking for. I mentioned our founders are, oh, it says sharing is not turned on, Eva. Like, yeah, I have the share button. We just tried that, but I'm requesting it, please. Um, okay.
All right, you
Or
should
if
be
you would
good.
like, oh, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody sees our Blue Columbine co-housing website, correct? So good. So a few things I like to use the website to drive this because it really does, again, give you the resources. But we also have loaded up here some features that I think are helpful to know from the beginning. And that's the fly-through that you see starting right now. This is a rendering, a video rendering of what the community is going to look like that was created by our architects. This is actually a quick video. I've got the wrong one pulled up here. It's more of an advertising video that is highlights. So let me scroll down to the actual flyover. Here we go, and we'll start it again. But it's nice to look at this while we talk about what things are, and I may stop it here and there. This is some of the work we've done already, getting our architects to this place. The actual plans were created after these renderings. So this gives you an idea, though, of what those plans will reflect. And we'll start with this layout. If you are facing this and you're familiar with the area on 44th Avenue, to the left of the screen would be the north side, and to the right is the south, and I'll make that larger. And so this open courtyard scene, we're on the 44th, but you'll see the property stretches back. It is 3.3 acres, and I like to point out that it's about 2.5, almost 3 city blocks long when you see it in the flyover, because it's hard for a lot of us to imagine what 3.3 acres really looks like, what it lives like. And then when our team talks about this, like for example, in the city council meeting, presenting it to the Wheat Ridge, they really did, somebody touched on this earlier, stress that this is designed to fit in the neighborhood. It is designed to be consistent with and offer, I think it was Mike's point, a lot of housing styles, which immediately makes a more diverse living community because of the diversity of units involved. So just looking at what we've got on the screen, the main building is an L-shaped building, like an apartment or condo style, that's got a great 4,000 square foot common house that we all would jointly own. And that's on the front facing the 44th, facing the avenue. And then stacked above that common house are some smaller apartments, or condos is really kind of the legal structure for those, but flats, we call them. And then what you're looking at directly across the courtyard on the kind of long part of the L, those are two larger 2 bedrooms and 3 bedroom flats. There's a courtyard. I'm going to hit play again. And so everything is designed with the intent to create spaces that naturally enhance community interaction, right? So it becomes accidental and part of your daily routine to meet each other mingling in the courtyard, and everything faces in. But there's a balance of privacy in co-housing. And so all of this courtyard is created to have zones and nooks and little places you could kind of sit on your own and have a little reading area, or another place you could tend a garden. Here are some of the more communal dining areas. I can't wait to have some fire pits and sing-alongs and things like that out there. And if you notice, as we looked at the common house, also set up for indoor-outdoor dining. We envision things like movies on the green and big cookouts and things that we can do in our very open indoor-outdoor kitchen. And then here are townhomes. And this is an area toward the middle of the property where townhomes in two sizes will be offered. And as we go through the property, it moves back into more open space. These are bike garages and workshop areas. What we're coming through right now is the pool house. There's also a dog wash and some kind of functional areas here. And then we have this beautiful back portion of the property that is a natural biofiltered pool with a natural beach. The city council last night was very impressed by that feature and asked a lot of questions about it. And then a dog run area. I think I might be one of the few non-dog owners. Eva and I are, I think, maybe the only two members who don't already have dogs. And this area is also intended and designed by our landscape architect to serve as sound buffer, because about a half to 3/4 of a mile from this perimeter fence is Interstate 70. Now, we've done sound testing out there. The decibel levels are comparable to your refrigerator or dishwasher, like 52, if you're familiar with those. One of our members, he's a scientist, went out there and actually took readings. One of the questions we get is there a lot of freeway noise? And we are within 3/4 of a mile or even less of that interstate. So there is some freeway noise, and part of what we say is anywhere you live in the city has some street noise, and it's relatively comparable to anywhere else that you live in an urban area. So it's not a particular concern for us, but we have asked the landscape designer to create this space intentionally, these berms, these trees, which all won't, of course, be full grown when we move there, but everything is designed to muffle and moderate the noise pollution that would come from that direction. So that's another reason for this layout. We're getting to the part now of the shared gardens. We haven't established exactly how we're going to operate all this, but we know gardening is important to a lot of us in the community. It is something that we value, is our involvement in nature, and that's also the location is fantastic for that. So we expect that will be a big part of our community. There is a ring road that goes through this community around the housing units, and between that back area that we just looked at, where the gardens and the pool and the maker sheds and the tool sheds and bike barns are. And this ring road is required by the city for fire safety and access, but is considered a private road of our community. It is deliberately designed to support our first responders who might ever need to use it. But also the plan is to use sustainable materials and that allow for some natural feeling, less like blacktop, with some areas of blacktop, particularly because kids want blacktop, right? For some kinds of play. So we want to make sure the surfaces are thoughtful, sustainable, and also functional for everybody in the community. Now, I like this particular view because you can see from now the opposite angle where we started. We're looking from the southeast in this direction. This common house, if you can see at I don't know if you can see my carrot moving toward the bottom middle of the screen, you can see a little of the exercise space that's been built. Above it is a library space with some outdoor patio, and then some arts and crafts room. All of these functional areas are part of our common house. And that's what most of this side of the building is. We also have a couple of guest suites. I love this feature. We decided as a community that it was worth devoting some of our communal space to a couple of guest rooms so that we individually could just downsize our units because we have all these shared amenities. If you look at the square footage of this development plan, there is probably 50, I think about 50% more square footage devoted to common areas than all of the 39 individual units combined. So it's really an amenity-rich community, right? We have got a lot that we share. And that's important to understand because you're not just buying your own unit, you're getting a piece and a share of all of these shared resources. What that means for things like pricing and marketing is it's not comparable to most. There are not a lot of comparable areas because even if you live in a condo, right, you have a proportional share of whatever community or amenities you have, but they're much less than what we've got in this community, right? So it is part of what we want to do is live communally and enjoy the good things. When you live efficiently, in community, you can have the good things, right? You can have the chef's kitchen that allows for big group cooking, for example, which we have in here. We have a devoted kind of bistro area, coffee shop, bar, because we value the hanging around, like and having some coffees or drinks together, and that being part of our internal community. There was a time when the founders and early members thought about operating a nonprofit coffee shop from the common house to be an active part of the larger community. And those plans fell out more or less for economy, but we retained this character of the hanging out space, that cafe space, because that felt like something that will nourish our community, that many of us would want to take interest in. And we do have, I'd say as a group, the value of being good neighbors and being active in our larger community. So some people have asked us, for example, is this a gated community? No, it's the opposite. We envision, inviting people into our space and and mingling with the neighborhood. For those who don't know the location or aren't locals, or if you're not familiar with the area, it is currently in a mixed zone that's got some residences all around it. It's also got some agricultural and industrial ratings. And that was why we had the vote at City Council last night. They officially and unanimously approved a zoning change specifically for our parcel to develop this community. And it had to pass a lot of standards and go through a couple of years of review with them before it got to this stage. But they have now blessed this, and it's beautifully located. I say always across the street, but really just a few steps down from Prospect Park, which is a wonderful 39-acre park. And it has trailheads, miles of trailheads there, a creek running through it, a few lakes and fishing ponds on the property. It's just gorgeous. And I feel like it's part of our community. It for sure is like our across the street from us. So we've met out there. We had our ice cream social out there because it is a really beautiful part. As I finish the tail end of this fly through, we'll raise up and you'll see how closely situated it is to the mountains, and that we're going to have some beautiful views from our property. And I think we get around to, oh, we cut it off. Here it comes. Oh no, we don't have that part on the saved. So you're going to have to trust me on this one. If you were standing on those open spaces right now and looking to the left of the screen or to the west, it's just a line of mountains that are the view there. So we're really close to the foothills and just a few minutes east of Golden. But what's so lovely also about this location, besides the nature, is it is readily accessible to the city. There are major bus lines through there. The city is currently producing and processing through a revitalization plan of this whole 44th Avenue corridor. And they really do look at our project as an example, even an exemplar of what they would like this neighborhood to become. which is a mix of open space and different styles of housing in an area that will be increasingly residential. A very large hospital relocated just last summer to about a mile from this property, and that is also going to, over time, be bringing more need for more housing in this area. So for a lot of those reasons, it's really an ideal location that is changing for the better and is actually really suited in a nice place. It is less than a mile to get to the local light rail station, and it is 2 stops to Old Town Arvada, which is a big, north suburban area with a lot of options for shopping and culture and things. 2 more stops and you're at Union Station and Denver. So it's really quite a great position that we're in the metro area.
Lisa, can I interrupt you? What was that hospital that just recently moved?
Is it St. Anthony's? It's not St. Anthony's, right? It's I forget the name.
It's Lutheran.
Thank
Yes,
you. I
St.
remembered it was
Anthony
one
is
that.
just south of there.
That's right. And right, it used to be a little bit east of this location, and they've moved now a little bit to the west and south, but it's within a mile. And again, for those who are familiar with the area, a similar thing happened 20 years ago when the Anschutz Medical Pavilion and Children's Hospital opened far east. And in the 20 years since they've opened, development has moved into their direction, including a lot more residential and residential supporting services and retail and restaurants and things. So we see a similar thing will happen in, kind of in this neighborhood, given the hospital and the revitalization plan that the city is launching. So yeah, John, did I hear a question?
Me? No,
Sure, just making sure. Yeah.
yeah, there's somebody moving their chair behind me.
Uh, I'm tuned to making sure I get those questions and I'm over listening. I got it. Last point I'll make about this before I move off from this is you can see some of the solar panels on the roof of these south-facing roofs, and they've been designed. We expect we will be able to get pretty close, if not achieve net zero carbon emissions from our community because we have enough solar. And we've designed it with the intent that it will be no gas lines in this community. It will be an efficient, sustainable electric, solar powered community. So that's something to know about it. We expect to have a lot of sustainable design and we'll have to get a little further along in the project before we start paying close attention to the materials and things. But our team of experts, haven't mentioned yet how great our team is. Really have some of the most experienced co-housing architects and advisors working with our group. Another important thing to know about the project, and we'll start talking about some of how do you join and what does it cost to become part of this and how's it going to operate. We have a really great team of advisors. We are doing one thing differently than most co-housing communities do, and that is we have not hired a developer for this project. We are developing it ourselves as a membership group, as volunteers, and we are working with the very experienced expert consultants and advisors we have and our architects, and really relying on our community and with their consultation to develop this. That does a few things for us, and it was a purposeful decision. It allows us to retain decision-making control over things like building materials and design. Ordinarily, a developer looks to make a profit, right, on the homes that they sell. So they make decisions that might differ from our value-based decisions about things like building materials or layout. So retaining design control has been important to us. And now that we've gotten so far along with all of the units design now and the approvals, I feel really proud about what we've been able to do without a professional developer. Our group remains, maybe that there will be a role for something like a developer at some point, but probably not. This project was conceived without the need for that. The other thing besides design control that we get with that decision is a lower price of these units, a lower cost. Because a developer will typically add 20 to 25% or more to the cost of the unit for their profit. We, on the other hand, will move in with no developer markup at all, which means essentially we move in almost guaranteed to have equity in the place because we have essentially bought below market value at cost. It's an amenity-rich community, so the price tag. You're paying for a lot of this land and that common areas as well as your own. But it's a really designed to be the community we built to serve our purposes as a community and without a markup for anybody's. So that's how the project has gotten to this far. We are advisors now. I'll talk in a moment about some more about the community, but I want you to know too what happened last night was the City Council of Wheat Ridge giving us approving unanimously the zoning change required for this specific development. And it's under Wheat Ridge rules, it is specific to this development. We couldn't change this plan significantly. We couldn't, without their approval. But now that we've gotten to this stage, just as of last night, now our architects take all of the planning that went into the unit design, this whole community development design, and they start turning that into the construction specifications. They start fine tuning what the exact square footage is of every unit, because these plans change when you add the plumbing and the electrical. And so we've got the overall plan now moves into more specificity so we can move to the construction phase. Our advisors are shopping for builders that we can hire, but they will want to look at those specifications our architects are developing to know what it's going to cost to build and what this project is all about. So the next few months, our architects will be, I think, through this winter, converting all of the work they've done now into these specifications, which are needed for construction and for financing. So we've gotten, the other thing they're needed for is listing on the MLS for general sale. And we have a realtor who's ready to go when we have all of those specific pieces that are needed for legal marketing and for construction specifications. So we're at a great point now where all of this is getting much more detailed and down to the exact specifications and inches even in these floor plans. But this is the overall concept of the design. And just so you understand the mix of units, you can see along this this left of the side, there's an open road and there are actually garages. There are about 4 or 5 garages there that have carriage units on top. Those are called the carriage units or Unit A. And those are reached by stairs. They are designed in a way to sit over the size of, I think, 3 of these they're tandem garages, long single but tandem. You can fit 2 cars in a line in them. And so they're designed to be situated above the garages. Those are the most affordable units. They're a lovely design. There's a loft option in that we're still kind of working out, and they come out to around 800 square feet. So that's what you see on the left side. And then toward the back of the property, if you're looking on the left and right, you can see the townhomes. Technically, we had to make some changes under Wheat Ridge law. Some are considered townhomes and some are considered duplexes, and they kind of got mixed a little bit different than we'd originally intended, but they're all still there. And those are 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units, an option there. Units F and G, if you're looking on the website, are these townhomes. These were designed by our architects. Initially, all of the units we got a draft plan from our architects, and then as a community of members, we met in May to revise those, to weigh in on them, to give our input, and to kind of update all of those floor plans. What happened to those townhomes was fascinating to me. We ended up changing the space around and kind of making our own marks on what we thought would be good living in those spaces. And then that included building in a space and the infrastructure so that if a person occupying one of those townhomes in the future wishes to add their own elevator, or even with a neighbor, for example, there will be the space and the infrastructure to do that. So they are not built in an accessible way. They're up two-story townhomes, but they are built with that ability to be modified. And that changed because of community input was that option might be something people would want at another time. Now, I mentioned the common house in the front, and then there's this long row down the opposite side here to the right. That's where the 2 and 3 story, or I'm sorry, 2 and 3 bedroom single story flats are, and they're stacked 2 or 3 stories high. Quite lovely designs for those as well, and also quite a lot of changes. I mentioned accessibility earlier, and I just want you to know there are 3 dedicated units already wheelchair accessible and designed for wheelchair living above the common house. They are smaller 1-bedroom units. Actually, they're for 1 bedrooms. They're pretty good size. I think 750 or 800 square feet in that neighborhood. And then every other apartment in those flats, the other couple of dozen units, they're not already wheelchair accessible and modified, but they are, we applied universal design principles throughout so that at any point that somebody needed to modify a unit, they would be readily, with minimum of modifications, we've already planned for that. So the spacing, the layout, the combination of features, who has a bath and who has a shower, all of those design elements of each unit were created and modified by our team to be accessible, readily accessible and adaptable. So that was really important for us to make accessible design throughout the complex. So that was one of the ways that our members actually changed what was planned. So that's some about the mix of units, and then there's a range of prices that go with them. Garages are priced separately, and we envision some folks may give up their cars, or we will probably have a couple of car shares on the property, we expect, because again, it's pretty accessible from public transportation, and some of the bicyclists in our group regularly commute on that trail and there's just, I mean, it's 20 miles of trails that are just across the street in the park, and you can get downtown from them, you can get into Golden. And so again, we're not expecting that everybody will want their own garage. So this is the general layout and the general community. And if you kind of come up the page a little bit, a summary of some of the common amenities, like we didn't dwell on them, but the potting shed, the garden sheds, the wood sheds, or I call them the maker's shed. I like to say that. The bike barns, that sorts. And if you click on something like the Learn More, you will get one of our pamphlets that's downloadable, and it kind of goes through, again, more detail about what the design looks like in the common house and what the spaces are. So I want you to know this is there. Now I'm going to go here and talk a little bit about floor plans and individual designs, just a bit. Some of the more common kinds. If there are any questions, though, Eva, are there any in the chat, or does anybody have anything so far they want to interrupt me and jump in with?
Nothing in the chat.
I do.
Yes.
Lisa, a while ago, there was some discussion about whether the ground floors of the townhouses could include a bedroom down there for the accessibility issue. And I saw in the email that you have apparently finalized the unit floor plans at this point in time. So has that been addressed, or is that not?
There was talk of it, and that didn't materialize.
Okay.
The accessibility issue in the townhomes, people preferred changing the layout. There are, for example, there was the stairs are designed so there's just a couple of steps and then one long staircase for a stair riser, for example, one of those, what are they called, chair lifts.
Yeah.
Other modifications were made that met members' concerns, and so we didn't end up putting living space. I think also the footprint of some of these properties shrank through the city review process and moved a little bit. So some of the initial plans, they required our architects to change, and that shrunk a little bit of the first floor print of these townhome units. And it was for reasons of they wanted greater setback for water retention on one area. They wanted better compatibility with the neighborhood and on another line, so they insisted on moving them. So there were a few modifications, and it wasn't the floor plan that would expand like that. In fact, we had quite a lot of work making these work the way we wanted them to within the new restrictions. And we did end up actually getting, I think, pretty good floor plans, but that wasn't the option that we.
Okay, so are the floor plans, the actual dimensions and specs available for viewing?
Yes, right up here, and I'll show you an example of one now. How's that? And this
Okay.
is where it says three housing options. Three housing options just means the townhome, the carriage houses, and some are flats, right? Apartment style.
Right.
And then each of these, if I click here, I'll get the unit overview, and this will give you, as that pulls up, a mix of what the houses look like, okay? And these are the updated square footage since and actually, you can see there's a pale line here, unit square feet from download. That's what we currently have on our website, what we originally planned. And then the modifications, total unit gross, that next line is what came after the final process, after we went through the city review and had the members weigh in. So there were some changes from what was initially planned, but we were able to revise them to get pretty close, I think, in the end again, and keep those. But this will give you again which unit is which, how many bedrooms each has.
Right, so that's the total, but you don't have the actual floor plan that shows the
We
specs for
do.
the.
So let me go back here and I'll
Okay,
show you
sorry.
where that is.
My bad.
So, but that's a great question. I'm going to click on Plan D because it's one of our most popular units, I think. It's what most members now seem to be interested in. About half of us like these units. And these are,
Okay, all right.
yep, this is a larger two-bedroom flat. I'll show you a townhouse in a minute too. And actually, this design has been slightly modified even in our ongoing conversations, even from this one posted on the web. Sorry about this, that keeps popping up. But it'll still give you a pretty good idea.
Okay,
So
no, that's exactly what I was looking for. Okay, I just
yeah,
need to go
exactly. It'll show
revisit
you.
the website.
Yeah, it's really great. And we did load it. Some things to know if you're not, like most of us are not, used to reading architectural diagrams. Um, all of these dotted lines, like for example, roof, this is the space that it would take a wheelchair user. These dotted
Mm,
lines are the area they need around the sink, around the range, around the bathroom vanity, and around the shower. So you can see even on the drawings where things have been adapted in advance to be maximum
okay,
accessibility, right?
okay,
Clearances, everything is there. All doors are 36 inches wide, interior, so you never have to widen a doorway or change a door if you end up wheelchair bound, or for example.
okay,
So some non-standard design aspects were applied through our process working with them.
okay. Then
Yeah,
I have one more question.
yeah,
Thank you for that. That's exactly what I was
great.
looking at. The email also referenced the fact that the site plan had been finalized. Is that then the same as what the fly-through shows?
Yes, pretty close. The fly-through was based on the original designs, and it
Right.
is mostly retained in what that was eventually. What changed, I could show you, were originally there was the L-shaped apartment building, then some open space, and then the townhomes. On the east border, the city wanted the townhomes to move and be attached to the building because of the quality or nature of the surrounding neighborhood there was more attached home. The townhomes then, larger townhomes, were moved to be, so they're all the larger three bedrooms now are together on the west side of the property because that's where the townhomes are on there's like a townhome neighborhood next door.
Oh,
So
right, on the west
and
side.
then there was also some, again, for water retention, for some of the city departments that weighed in after the planning requested, moving some borders and things like that here and there. So they were minor modifications. That's the major one, is separating the two-bedroom townhouses on one side that
Okay,
are connected now to the condo building, as I call it. And then on the other side are three-bedroom townhomes. And we had a
okay.
different mix before.
I think you don't probably don't remember this, but I joked a while ago, if the pool was gone, then I was too. But so the pool is still there, that's fine.
The pool's there, and the pool was an object of much discussion among the city council. They were like, "What is a natural pool? We want to know about that." And we explained that our team explained it uses a minimum of chemicals, and it is designed to be biofiltered by the vegetation and the rocking around it. So it's our landscape architect is a really great
Yeah.
designer with experience in sustainable, appropriate, climate specific and zone specific and location specific design. And so, and that's part of the plan is that pool. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's a really very little change except the placement and of a few things. And then it did shrink in terms of kind of where it was along the borders a little bit, which kind of changed what our options were on some of the floor plans. But you could click on any of these, and I'll try one more just as a example here. This is a 3-bedroom townhome design. And this is the second largest unit, I think. And I just need to size it down a little bit so you can see it all. But we had, again, sorry about that, a good input to making this a little bit more what we envisioned would be comfortable for our living. So redesigning the layout a little bit back here, there was originally a back door and a different powder room and a different kind of stairway. And for accessibility, we wanted to change the stairway. We wanted to make the living space a little more distinct than originally. So there were some modifications. And then Eva was one of our voices of drop zones. We all wanted drop zones. You walk in, you've got your muddy boots on, you want someplace you can, hang your coat and set your stuff down. So little design elements like that changed a lot to really maximize our flexibility with the space we had to work with was really
Yeah.
kind of what we ended up with after. And this space that says flex here on the second floor and storage on the first floor is the place where now it's an elevator could be placed. What's nice about it is that it's in the interior. If two households decided they wanted to share that, for example, that makes it possible. And one of the features we've been learning about as we get closer and closer to this community being realized, in a co-housing, very often people will share ownership beyond our original plan. For example, maybe I don't buy a garage when I move in and later decide I would like one. Maybe I share a garage with somebody. Maybe we don't build all the garages at first because they're not in demand, and later a few of us go in on building a new set of 3 or something like that, right? There are often deals that community members make together. And so our folks knowing that said, let's put this elevator space, if it ever becomes that, it's now located where families could share that investment or that construction. So little things like that, I think, reveal the intent behind the community to share what we can. We spent the day that we workshopped these floor plans at a co-housing community, Wild Sage in Boulder, and we toured it and Silver Sage. And that really gave us a lot more of a kind of visceral understanding, I think, of what these communities end up looking like. Some people, for example, had said they thought the courtyard looked like a little cramped. It's only 50 feet between that door and that door. It seems like not enough space. When you get into these communities and you see things like the way these courtyards and these nooks and crannies, and it really becomes this lovely layout where there are little places you can kind of go on your own or sit at a table with a friend, and here's another open one where other people can gather more openly. So it's lots of little niches that blend that community and that privacy in just a really lovely way. So we got to learn a little bit about that. I think that's a lot about our community so far and some of the amenities. So why don't we talk a little bit about what it takes to join this community, where we are and how we're financing it and processing it. I would say for any of these properties that you looked at the floor plans, it says up here a $620 per square foot. That is probably a very, pretty accurate price for us. We say probably because our budget for this whole development was created about 3 or 4 years ago But by Jim Leach, who is they call him the godfather of co-housing. He's now retired, but he is one of the most experienced people in the country at creating co-housing communities. So his budget took into account the, expected inflation. And at the time, in fact, there were, I think, coming out of COVID and prices for construction materials were very high. And so some of this budget, it definitely needs to be reworked now that we have the final floor plans, because that's what dictates, right, everything, right? The cost of building and the cost for us to buy a home. So all the prices are estimates now that will be getting fine-tuned in the next few months. I think this 620 per square foot is a good guideline to use for now. And keep in mind, if I went back to that overview document, you would see about 50,000 square footage of all of our 39 units, but 75,000 or 70,000, I think, square feet of common house and common buildings and common, commonly owned shared spaces. So there's so much more than that per square foot is pretty expensive if you're buying just a home, right? But if you're getting also the share of all the other things in the community, one of the tear outer packages that you can download from here has a great handout I really like about how efficient it is to live in co-housing and what you save on. You save on gym membership because, we have our own exercise studio, and you save on, maybe dining out because you eat with folks. Your utility costs tend to be much lower, not only because of our solar array, but because we share the infrastructure and we designed it. So our main architect, Brian Bowen, for example, lived in co-housing in Boulder for 18 years. And he says when he moved out, he was shocked at the cost of things like, he has to buy his own lawnmower now. That's kind of a joke in the co-housing community. Everybody doesn't need their own lawnmower. Your costs for what you do to support yourself in an individual home are so much more than the costs of sharing resources in a community. He said he was paying something like $7 a month for his internet service in their community, and they had hardwired T1 super fast, Wi-Fi. So things that we can't translate as much if we're used to living in individual spaces become, there's just an economy of scale and shared resources that makes everything more affordable. And these communities tend to take on, I teach you a little bit of this and you teach me a little bit of that. And it turns out one of our folks knows some plumbing and somebody else knows computers. And so you often end up turning to your community for support and for things that you might have to spend money on if you lived alone, right? So there are so many ways that this becomes a more affordable way to live, even though it's not affordable housing per se, right? It is an efficient way to share resources. And in our community, we want to get the good stuff to share with each other because we're able to, and we can all share, the costs. What we still have to determine, and which we'll be starting very soon, is what are the guidelines for living in our community on a regular basis? Do we believe in, what we expect we'll share meals a couple of times a week? Probably there's not a requirement on that. You can participate how you like, right? But we want to start building those community expectations, making some of the original decisions about what can we contract out? What do we have skills internally for? What do we feel like we can share in the responsibility of upkeeping our property? Some folks are gardeners. Some folks in our community, I think, are master gardeners. And there might be a lot of, folks who say, we don't need to hire out any of our gardening, for example. We'll do it all ourselves. Those kinds of decisions we haven't made yet. And will probably be evolving as our community grows. We wanted to wait until we felt like we had enough voices at the table that it would be reflective of more than just a few people, right? And it would really be a model that would be that could grow with this community. So we're just getting started on that now as our membership is growing. And we'll be doing more of that going forward while our architects are doing these construction plans. We'll be doing things like coming up with our community guidelines, the committees, and the things that we will use. Expectations for things like roommates and sharing, having, I, for example, I'm interested in having a housemate. We probably want a policy on something like that. We've had a couple of folks who joined recently who are, I mentioned an intergenerational family. Do they both need to sign the agreements? Do they both have to commit to, all those things about participation and what do we do in our community are things that we have yet to figure. We do know that we share values of sustainability, that we believe in communal decision making to the maximum extent we can. And as a membership group right now, we operate as much as we possibly can by consensus. And that means really what that means is prioritizing your relationship over your stake in this decision, right? And making sure that we're not treating each other like transactional folks, but as community members with valid concerns, and we're working to get to a place everybody can work with a decision. We've also talked about, and we're expecting more training and support from our Co-Housing US resources and from others. And we're working more within the co-housing community at large to learn about things like dispute resolution and making sure that we are not getting into some of the traps and pitfalls that communities see, like you're so committed to consensus that you can't make an urgent decision that needs to be made very quickly, right? Our group has said, for example, maybe the health and safety issues, we just do a majority vote if we can't reach consensus quickly, right? So things like that, our standards, our commitments to each other, we still have to flesh out. What we do now, and this is how the process works, I mentioned the developers and the cost, we need to raise about $5 million of this project to get the funding for a construction loan. We expect the whole project's going to cost more like $16 to $20 million for build. So our goal is to raise enough to secure the financing for the construction without having to hire a developer, right, to do this. What we've done is created this structure, again, with our advisors and the lessons of other communities that have fallen into pitfalls. So what we've asked of every member has signed an agreement that called a reservation agreement, and we have committed to putting essentially our paying into the community before the housing is available, right? All of us have put in, and on the website, I'm going to point something out because it's out of date, and I want you to know that. And we're working to update it now that we have our specifications and floor plans. Oh, wrong place. It is, well, I don't want to spend my time trying to find something on the website for you, but there is an outdated diagram of payment schedules and what we, when we want to accomplish this. And what we originally set out to do was every person would contribute around $175,000 in advance. And if we could get 29 folks, households in at that level, that raises our $4 to $5 million we need to secure the financing. So our agreement is structured where we've all agreed to pay in installments toward that goal. What's actually happened is that we have been able to finance and pay for our costs to get to this point without collecting the whole 175, from every member. We have stepped away from the original schedule we had planned of installments so that we can protect ourselves with our money and our investment in this community until we know this is a viable project that's going to happen and we're breaking ground. And we've been able to keep up with our costs without collecting more from each other. Actually, I take it back. It's not 25, it's now 27,000. We had a small increase recently to cover some costs. So as a group, we're deciding when is the next payment due? When is our next installment due? If a new member joins, they join at 27,000 to be on the same footing as everybody else. And they're still signing agreements as our goal is to raise this 175,000, but we've suspended the payment schedule as a group until we feel good about that this is really moving forward. It's a way of protecting our investments and not getting ahead of ourselves. And that's how we've been operating for about the last year and a half, is just thoughtfully deciding when we need to put in some more and kind of keeping that schedule. We will get to the point where we're going to need to raise that cash. We're also working with potential investors. There are some folks who want to see socially beneficial communities like this evolve, and we've had some serious nibbles, and we may have some other options. But that would be another way to raise the $4 or $5 million that we need to get the financing without everybody paying the full amount as anticipated. How most communities work, though, is the original contributors put in something like close to their down payment in advance. It's essentially what we do. And then once we get to the point where we have we've secured the financing and we're ready to hire a builder, we can break ground. We're on schedule. That could still happen in spring of 26, and we're really hoping that could happen. We need to get more members committing some funds to do that. But then once we get to that point, um, everybody who joins after that, the rest of the dozen units or whatever that are left in the community, they're just a straight up mortgage financing, right, for a new home build. So it's the folks who are investing sooner, the future residents who are putting in their money, who are helping us to get to that point. And that last portion is a regular traditional sale of a new home. So that's how we are going to make it work. That's the model we've been following. New members joining this week are putting in $27,000, and they understand and they're signing an agreement and saying there may be another call at some point for the next, $10,000 payment or $15,000 installment as we're working through this. Still investigating other ways to raise that money. Obviously, what that kind of expense does is limit the eligibility of people to buy into this community at an early point, right? And we're very conscious of that. And we would like to have a diverse community that is not just, limited to the people who have 175,000 to contribute in advance, or the equity in a home to draw that out, for example, or some funds or life savings to pull from. Like a lot of us, some folks have sold homes, some of us have pulled out HELOCs, lines of credit from our existing equity for homeowners to finance this. But if we can find alternative means that make it more accessible to buy in at a lower level, we absolutely want to be able to do that. So that's another reason we continue talking to folks who might be investors at some point to bring down the level of buy-in earlier than even that construction loan hits. We do want to set aside a few units once we get to the stage of building, and work with Habitat for Humanity or a similar organization like that. Meg, a couple of our co-founders and members have spoken with them, and they're interested once we know the community is going to be built, right? Once we're shovel ready and ready to go, they will work with us to set up some accessible units in this community that are probably income restricted and make sure we get some folks in at a more affordable level. But I think in terms of overall market prices, we move in probably with equity right away, and we're fairly competitive with what the prices are in this metro area. You get actually a lot more because of all the communal spaces. So I know I've gone quite a while talking. I want to hear if there are questions I haven't answered or things that you still want to know. And yeah. Barbara, did you have a question?
Yes, actually, I have a couple. But first, I just want to thank you for that extraordinary presentation and the extraordinary work that's already been done. It's very impressive. I guess just kind of randomly, what would are you projecting the total population of residents to be?
Good question. We settled on 39 units. 39 units that are a mix of some one and mostly 2 and 3 bedrooms. And the reason for that, everything is purposeful with this group, is because experience has taught co-housers that about 60
Right.
adults is about the limit of functional consensus decision
Right.
making.
Yeah.
Once you get beyond that, it becomes much more challenging to work on a consensus model. And we really do believe in sharing the decision-making authority among the community and doing what's right for the community. So it is a way, increasing the number of units could bring down the pricing. And we have 3.3 acres, but we committed to staying at that level so that we could be a consensus model decision-making community.
Great, thanks. Also, just out of curiosity, what do you project the monthly HOA possibly to be?
Yeah, that's another good question. It is going to operate very much like a condo or HOA. Legally, that's kind of the closest entity in Colorado to what we're doing, although there are big differences because we are intentional about belonging to this community and committing beyond just being a private homeowner, right? And it does change the nature of things. So we have estimated 300 to 400 a month because for the amenities in any other community, a traditional community, it would be probably double that.
Sure.
But I think in a community where we all have some work share or some, something else involved, we're that's a kind of a typical lower end condo community of this side.
Mhm.
So we're thinking that's where it'll be.
Mhm.
But and that will be for things like you know, the powering the common house. Again, we're generating a lot of our own power, so that's going to help. The common things that we need to pay for, the equipment and furniture
Sure.
and groceries for our common dinners, those kinds of things. But they're also your internet,
Mhm.
you know, the pool maintenance and the gardening and all that. So the snow shoveling, that was one of the questions one of the city councilors asked last night. Are we responsible for this, or does the community take care of their own snow shoveling? Yeah, we're stuck with it.
Lisa,
That's our
Lisa, if I may, Lisa,
Hi,
also
Debbie.
added in there is the insurance because,
Yes,
as a community, we have to have an insurance policy,
right.
liability and everything. So our own personal insurance for our individual homes will likely be from drywall in, and it
Right.
has very
Yes.
little expense. It's like maybe $100 a month.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And but in that HOA, it's going to be going toward our community
Right.
insurance. We'll need to
So
have,
anything outside the footprint.
right.
Yes.
Okay.
Good point. Thank you, Debbie. Debbie's one of our members who's currently in Texas. And I see John has a question too.
Since my question really is just more comment along line. You just mentioned projected monthly assessment. Um, I've been in 3 different condominium communities, and I've been increasingly involved in the financial side. Uh, and I think that it's almost every community that I've encountered starts with too little in their monthly assessment plan, and they end up not having adequate reserves to handle capital expenditures as they come. So my one of other things would be going to take a really close look at that and get a realistic handle on it. Yes, it makes the property less attractive when the monthly assessment is due, is high. But on the other hand, if 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, all of a sudden you have to have a special assessment
Mhm.
to catch up. And I'm working on that right now for the place that I'm living. And they had pretty good idea what they're doing and still not quite there. I moved
Yeah,
from
I
a
agree.
moved from a place that basically does not have the reserves after 35 years to do anything. And it's there, everything's 35, 40 years old.
Yes, I lived in a 30-year-old condo community for a while, and I also got increasingly interested in the finances for just those reasons. Kind of under reserves. Reserves are absolutely something we want to have in place. Somebody trips on your property and sues, right? Something falls apart. There's a, you know, there's a catastrophic storm that, you know, there's any number of things. And then there's regular maintenance. You have to paint every so often. You have to, you know, fix a pothole on your road or whatever it may be. Just the regular building maintenance. I've got trees that I've got to get trimmed at my house, and I'm dreading my tree trimming bill. So we all know, you know, if you've been homeowners, yeah, that's absolutely, I agree. Reserves are important for us.
Elevators are very expensive. That's
Yes, and I was a little surprised that that was something that some members wanted. They're not there's one elevator I think in this whole complex, and that is in the common house because rather in that building, the common house building, because all of those units, the flats, are all accessible because of that. And then the common areas, the laundry rooms, the suites, the library, those are accessible by elevator as well. I didn't mention so much, you can see it in this design. There are also private outdoor spaces for every one of these units. So everybody's got some patio or the townhomes have their own small yards. So there is definitely, but they're designed with that setback. So everybody has a little bit of private space as well. And as Debbie pointed out, and as John's commenting, yeah, usually in a condo kind of situation like that, you're responsible for, you know, everything inside your doors and your property line and the community is insured for everything else. So
I don't want,
Is that more, John? Yeah.
I don't want to take up too much time. I have many questions that probably would be more appropriate for a working session. So
Sure.
I sent some of them in chat, and I think I assume that on the website and further communication would find out when there are working meetings and that can be focused.
And
Yeah, so
Lisa, if I may step in real quick. So John, you bring up a great point. We have, these informational meetings. We try to keep them about an hour, point out on the website, where you can find information. But often, and pretty much everyone who's become a member, at least since I've joined, has asked for additional information. So we're happy to get on one-on-one calls and go through more detail. And when questions come up that is better answered by our architects, we send them off to our architects. In fact, we have members who met one-on-one with our architects to really deep dive into some of their questions. Because I'm not an architect and I don't want to give wrong information, playing telephone back and forth. So, whatever we're full transparency, whatever questions people have, we want to help you get the answer. So before people have to sign off tonight, just know that we're always available for deep dive into some of the specific questions you may have. And we'll pull in the architects as necessary. They're very accommodating. They know people have specific questions.
And I don't know if this is too labor intensive or not, but it might be useful to have an FAQ section if you don't already have one. So, for example, John raises a number of really good questions in the chat, and I think a lot of other people might be curious about the answers to those. So that might be something that you could somehow post as well.
Great
Yes,
idea.
actually, if you look on the resources page of the website, there is a lengthy FAQ there now. And
Okay.
every time we get in a question that we recognize as one that everybody will need to know,
Okay.
and we try to update those questions and answers. So it's
Okay,
really
good.
over time. And if you haven't looked lately, you might not be aware how much is on there because we really have added as we learn what people's questions are. The latest member is signing up this week, and I was just on the call with her on Monday. And at first, she kind of apologized for all the questions she's asked before joining. And I said, these are great questions, and we don't have answers to every single one. We have answers to most. But part of what you get when you become a member is we answer the questions together. We figure them out. And the same thing happened to me when I joined 2 years ago. I sent Meg and Josh, our founders, like I think I'm ready to join. I've come to a couple events. I'm excited about this community and the opportunity to get in and shape it, which is so unusual. But here are my questions, and they could answer about half of them, and they were really candid about the other half. We're going to have to figure out as we go. Some of these decisions you can plan only to so much extent, right, in advance. And then the realities hit, like the city wants this moved back, and this is changing in the prices or the availability of whatever. And so we really and then our personalities affect it too, right? Because we are a community of individuals, and we're trying to build that. I'm really excited about the increasing quality of deep interest that we're getting. And we have so many followers who've been kind of waiting for us to kind of get to this point, right? Like Mike, who's here, and it's true. We've really got to a point now where it feels like there's some momentum. We've added some members. We've got the city council approval now. We've got everything moving from the vision to the plans, right? The specifications. And that's really the point where we are. So for some of our folks who've been in this the longest, I think, have had their little bit periods of discouragement. And there's always a new member saying, this is great, it's going to happen, and we're so excited about it, and we're making progress. And we really are. Where we were even 6 months ago is so much different from where we are now. So it's really nice to be able to say that and see, again, if we get the members in, we will be able to break ground. We should be able to break ground in spring. We've got the other things in place or in progress that need to happen. So it's really the financing that's left to get there. Yeah. Barbara, another? Yeah.
Yes, thanks. I don't have a keyboard for the chat, but when a new member joins, is it with a commitment to a particular floor plan?
No, that's a great one. What you get, it's called a reservation agreement, and by joining, you reserve your spot on the list, the order of selection of the units. So because we're not quite to that point where we need to make those final decisions yet, what we've done is we've periodically surveyed our members. What are your top two choices? A lot of us changed after the design process happened, frankly,
Mhm.
because I mean, I'm even thinking about buying a bigger place and getting a housemate because there's some lovely designs that would really be great for that. And I'm kind of, bent that way. I like living with people around. So, other people are like, I can downsize now because these smaller floor plans are awesome and I've got all these amenities. So that's how we've been kind of managing and keeping track of kind of who's interested in what. And we've got a little variety. People are in different places. I would say those D units, the larger 2-bedroom flats, have been popular with about half of us. But we are not committed, and you are not committed when you join. You get a spot to choose when that time comes.
I'll add in, because I've been working with the Houston group who's getting ready to open the doors. They had someone just a couple weeks ago move units. So, and they're getting ready to like move in a month. And it's driving the founders crazy, but people are still shuffling about. So it does happen.
Yes, Debbie has moved into another co-housing community while waiting
Will
for-
be, right.
Will be, right. In Houston while waiting.
Until we're ready to go in Denver, yes.
That's right. So we have another member who was for 9 years involved in a project in Austin that never got off the ground and everybody lost their money. And part of it was 2008 when the bubble burst and plans changed and people lost their jobs. But all that to say, we have really studied and tried to learn from everybody's experience. What are the common pitfalls that lead to that happening and avoid them? And this group does not have the appetite to let this go on for years without breaking ground. We just don't. And that's why we've been conservative about putting our money in as well and making sure that we're not putting in more than is realistic for what we're building. And so it is a good group, I think, that is committed to seeing this through, but also doesn't want to overextend ourselves and wants to be responsible about making it happen. So all that to say life gets in the way and people will probably be shuffling at the last minute when we get to that point too. Debbie's learning a lot from this community experience that she's going through, and we are really now tapping into, have been for a year, the larger co-housing movement around the country, so that we're getting really good advice, building our relationships with folks who are kind of mentoring us. And even in July, I don't think anybody here other than Eva and I were at the ice cream social. Kelly Teeter, who is one of the founding members at Hearthstone Co-housing in Denver, came and spoke with folks about raising kids in co-housing, because we don't have any families yet with young children, and we want that to happen. And our advisors tell us, don't worry, it takes the first one to be brave, and then everybody else starts joining behind them. But we're trying to make sure we are attracting, we don't want to be a retirement community, right? We want to be a multi-generational community, including the kids and the teens and everything else. So, but
they'll come. They'll come. It's just going to be closer to when we're breaking ground or moving in. They just don't have the resources to do it right now.
Yes, we are at the hard part of the project that all the co-housers talk about, which is raising that first capital to get the financing. And ordinarily, the way other communities are doing it is hiring a developer. And we have chosen not to do that for all the reasons that we've talked about. So I like it. It means we're a kind of a scrappy group of volunteers trying to make this happen. But it's getting closer and closer. So I want to be sensitive to time and make sure we wrap up. But let me reiterate what Eva said, that anytime you want to reach out, if you want to drop a request, a one-on-one, we meet people for coffee. We'll meet you at Prospect Park, which is a great way to like see the neighborhood. If you're in town, we'll get on the phone with you or a Zoom if you're not local. But we're happy to answer questions. We're at a really serious point here, and I think before long, hopefully, we'll be seeing like the spots fill up. But right now, we really just need folks to join and help us make it happen. So.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Hope to hear from some of you tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks, Eva.
Oh, and
John asked, we don't have the agreement online. I don't know
No,
why
but
we
if you-
never did that, but we'll send it to anyone who wants it so you can look at it. And then usually the next step is really to sit down and go through that with Lisa and Josh tend to take that on because they're the most experienced current members. But before that, or any time before or after that, and you have more questions, John, you have a lot of great questions. I'm going to try to track some of those down with the help of Lisa and Josh and our architects and get some answers to you. But most members, I was kind of the exception where I went to one meeting and signed up, 2 months later, but most members, go through many questions and answers, right? That I just wasn't smart enough to think of all the questions. I just dove in. I was like, that sounds good to me.
You and me both, even.
It's pretty
Yeah,
appealing.
but most people go through several rounds of talking to, our experts. So we get answers to your questions because it's a big decision, of course.
And a lot of it depends on how familiar you are with the idea of living in community or living in co-housing, right? And some of
Yeah.
us have looked for that for others, and others of us come upon it. I'll close with this. Josh and Meg, who are the founding couple who kind of kicked off the whole thing, when I met them a few years ago, I asked Josh, "Well, how did this project come to be? Like, who thought of it?" And he starts telling, "Well, I just had this idea one day. Wouldn't it be great if you lived around your friends and family?" And I stopped him. I said, "Josh, did you think you invented the idea of co-housing?" He's like, "I kind of did, actually." I was surprised to find out there was a whole thing, industry out there and that people do this. And I was like, "Oh my goodness, that's very cute, right?" Like, I'm somebody who, like 35 years has dreamed, like, would there be a community like this where I could get in? Like Mike was saying, was on a lot of lists for a lot of years with very little coming open in the existing communities that are out here. So it's really nice to have this opportunity to get in. And I can't say it enough, our advisor team is so experienced that everything we ask them, they have answers for and a reason. And that's been really helpful to us too. So
the recording of this will be available at
Yes,
some point?
I'll put it on our website. Thanks for the reminder. I could probably stop the recording pretty soon because a couple of people wanted to see it. And we have I think 2 other recordings, but this will be the most up-to-date one, right? A lot has happened since the last time we posted a recording, which was back in May.
And
Yeah.
it will include the Q&A?
Oh, I don't know how to do that.
I'll tell you what, if you want the copy of, like, you want to see the answers to, what John's raising, I haven't even seen them in the chat yet because I haven't been focusing on that. Drop your email, let us know you want a copy, and we'll send out the answers to everyone.
Okay.
Some of you have already used our Gmail, our Blue Columbine Cohousing at gmail.com. You can send in messages to that. And we take turns and just kind of managing that message and getting things out back to you. That FAQ document on our webpage has a lot of information now. And if we see some things in these questions that we feel like should be up there for everybody to see, we'll see what we can do to get them added so that our point is to give you as much information as possible because it's a big commitment and we're asking a lot, right? So you need to know, that's why questions are natural and expected. So. Okay.
I'm going to stop
Thank
the
you.
recording. And Lisa, since we have a few more things to catch up on, if you want to stay a few minutes,
That sounds good.
let me stop the recording. Thanks everyone for joining us. It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yay, right?
Thank you for setting this up.
Yeah,
Good
happy
to see you. Thanks for
to meet
coming.
everyone.
I'll be in
Bye.
touch.
Bye.
Good. Take care.